Here's Steve Kaplowitz and Adrian Broadus.
Welcome back, everybody. Good to have you here on a Monday afternoon. Sports Talk ready to go on 600 ESPN El Paso. We got a full house today. In fact, normally we'd be talking about the NBA Eastern and Western Conference Finals and how the T-Wolves came back to win a huge game on the road in Denver, and the Knicks just ran out of players because of all their injuries, not to mention Xander Schauffele and what he was able to do at the PGA. But, Adrian, we decided to do something a little different today. We want to devote the entire show to name, image, likeness and give everybody listening a 3-hour primer so that when they're done with today's show, not only do they understand NIL, but they'll feel more comfortable contributing to NIL.
I mean, Steve, this was an idea that we put together pretty quickly. Credit to you. You came up with all of this today, which was awesome. I mean, the fact that we're doing this right away, I think our listeners will appreciate that because they have a lot of questions when it comes to name, image, likeness. There's a lot of unknowns when it comes to this subject, and I think people need to not think of it as like the wild, wild west or this thing that shouldn't be, embraced. In fact, they should embrace it. And name, image, likeness is happening all across the country, and it's happening here at UTEP too.
It really is, and that's why we brought back Mike Levy with us along with Aaron Price. Now, Michael's official title is Deputy Athletic Director for Revenue Generation. I have to go to the UTEP staff directory to make sure I don't butcher these titles, but that's Michael's title. He is the Deputy Athletic Director for Revenue Generation. Aaron Price's title now is Assistant Athletic Director, NIL Strategy and Sports Excellence. Hang on one second, guys. There we go. There we go now. Welcome back to the show, Michael.
That's an important title, Aaron.
Has Aaron even – grab that microphone, Aaron. Move it closer to you. I wonder, have you even developed business cards with that title yet?
I just got them recently, yes. So,
did you really?
yeah.
And they fit all that in one business card,
I wanted an acronym. I'm going to have to come up with something.
Yeah, because – NSSE just doesn't work. You got to come up with something else that makes sense.
Yep.
That would be good. But, gentlemen, welcome back to the show. It's good to see you both. And really, starting the first hour with the two of you is important, I think, because, number one, when Aaron was named Assistant AD for NIL Strategy and Sports Excellence, people are probably wondering, so is Aaron working for the university or is he working for the collective? And Michael, the answer is simply Aaron is part of UTEP and still part of UTEP.
Yeah, absolutely. He's an integral part of UTEP. And I guess that's good. When we – and hiring Aaron's position, we really wanted people to start asking those questions because, frankly, we probably hadn't, to Adrian's point, had enough people involved with NIL to date, and we needed to change people's perception of that. And so the university having Aaron really closely connected to that and providing a bridge for us to feel more comfortable was really the impetus for his position.
Now, before we really get to Aaron specifically and throw questions at the two of you, Michael, I think it's important with your background in college athletics. You've kind of seen the NIL shift since its infancy, since it started about 3 years ago, and how it's grown since then. So why don't we start off today's show, kind of give people a primer into name, image, likeness, when it first was given the green light to really where we are now as far as college athletics.
Yeah, thank you for the platform, Steve. Good to see you again. So July 1, 2021 is when all of this became legal, when student athletes had the opportunity to monetize their name, image, and likeness. And since that point, NIL, as it's more commonly known, has evolved. And every day that we have gone on, the university can have more and more of a hands-on role in helping student athletes at our institution find these deals, find opportunities to monetize their name, image, and likeness. And so clearly the top-level schools, some of the Power 4 schools were out in front of this and developed pretty quickly both internal and external partners that help their student athletes find those deals. And really where we are to date, there's kind of multiple different ways NIL is playing out. how we want it to play out and how it's been happening here in our community. There's been great companies that have stepped up and reached out directly to student athletes saying, hey, I own a business. I would love to have you on a commercial to help promote my business. That's traditional NIL, right? That's an opportunity to do it. Then there have formed outside entities that are called collectives, which is really a business. That their business is to help connect community members, businesses, anybody having an interest in helping student athletes promote their NIL. And these collectives look and feel a lot like fundraising organizations for the university. So when I was at TCU, we had the Frog Club, which is like the minor athletic club. And then you had the Flying T Club, which is the NIL collective. Just so happened that the person that was the executive director of that NIL collective used to be an employee of the university. And so there's a lot of synergy there. Here at UTEP, obviously we'll get into this, but the minor collective developed pretty quickly after this rule came about, and backed, Josh Hunt and Miguel Fernandez were really the ones that said, hey, we want to step up and help minor basketball and help the student athletes connect to our community and provide that exposure. And Steve Haskins, who I know will be joining, has really kind of helped lead the charge there. And it's been a great way, and frankly, a lot of the success that the program has had recently in retaining players and keeping guys engaged is due to the minor collective. There hadn't been that type of support for all the other 16 programs here at UTEP. And so when I got here 2.5 months ago, really saw that as kind of top priority of figuring out how can we provide that same level of support. And so fortunately, we're happy to announce that the Goldmine Collective launched about a month ago and is actively looking to partner with student athletes of all sports. And I know you could probably get into what that looks like, where we're at now and where we're trying to go. But really, where we are in terms of legislation, just kind of like I mentioned, we need to be prepared institutionally to be as involved as we possibly can with NIL, because if we're going to educate our student athletes, if we're going to coach our student athletes, being able to have a hand in helping them find these opportunities, we feel is really important. And so we're operating completely within the rules of having the institutional involvement. But at the end of the day, these are outside organizations that are truly partners.
How have the rules changed in the last 6 to 12 months? Because when we used to talk NIL, when it was first around, and we knew that collectives had formed, including the one here with the minor collective, what we were always told is the university had to keep their distance from the NIL. The NIL would work in conjunction with the university, but they really were supposed to almost tap into the NIL as an outside resource versus something that was actually part of the school itself. Is that still the case, or have they relaxed that a little bit more now so that universities can kind of interact with NIL collectives more than maybe in the past?
The rules have relaxed, but there are still some key things that have maintained. So really the university's role, and especially us as fundraisers and development officers, is to educate our community, right? Educate our donor base on here are opportunities to be supportive. Now, universities can have a more hand-in-hand role in facilitating opportunities for our student athletes. So that means we can have more blunt conversations with coaches. We can have more direct conversations with donors, but we need to fall short of actually walking into the room with somebody and putting together a proposal that has a specific dollar amount for a specific student athlete. We take the money and we give it to the student athlete. It's more of, hey, Steve, I would really encourage you to support the minor collective or the Goldmine collective, because here's the impact you can have on the life of this student athlete or these student athletes, as well as here's what it's going to mean for the longevity and growth of our program. If you're interested in doing that, I would love to introduce you to Steve Haskins, or I'd love to introduce you to Mike Luciano, Cliff Eisenberg. Or you can go directly to this website now. And I know Jim Wills with Carrington will be on here. So you want to do it, here's a way you can do it right now.
And that's important you mention that, because coming up on the show today, we will have, in our 5 o'clock hour, Steve Haskins coming in on behalf of the Miner Collective that he works with. Cliff Eisenberg will be coming in on behalf of the Gold Mine Collective that he is also a part of, because there are 2 UTEP collectives. And in the 6 o'clock hour, we're going to shift it over a little bit to New Mexico State. Paul Grindstaff is going to join us from the A Mountain Sports Collective with New Mexico State, as well as the aforementioned Jim Wills from Carrington, who started basically a fundraising effort years before NIL, but now he is helping through Carrington to operate NIL collectives for about 16 schools around college athletics, which is amazing considering how that has transformed over the last few years. So the point is this, Michael, there's a lot going on. UTEP right now is trying to make things easy for people to support, but more than anything, I think make sure they understand where money would go and what it could do in the process.
You hit the nail on the head. Our goal is to clear the runway to land the plane, right? We feel there's a lot of confusion, right, with NIL, and when you have all these different needs and people are coming from so many different angles, they feel like I don't want to do anything because they don't know where to go, so there's inaction. And so our goal is to clarify the message, to break it down, and to provide some direction for individuals. And so those are active conversations that everyone in the Minor Athletic Club is having with prospective donors, because we want them to have questions answered so they feel comfortable in order to make an investment in one of our NIL or both, hopefully, collectives.
I think it's also important to note this too, okay, is that NIL actually is now giving individuals to have a direct impact on sports and athletes that those different sports are recruiting and retaining. It never used to be that way, but now it is. And the truth is that the idea of bringing a player in, developing them over 4, 5, or 6 years, depending on the sport, having them stay and turn into an all-conference player, perhaps a pro player, I don't want to say it's a thing of the past, but things have changed now. And the truth is that in college sports today, the more money you have to spend on athletes, the better things could potentially be. That's just how college athletics has evolved in recent years. And if fans don't give for NIL collectives, one program could maybe be not as good, as well off as an equal or comparable school where the NIL is large and they are giving and the programs do have money to use to go out and recruit players and retain other players. And I don't necessarily know if I like it, but hey, that's just where it is today. And I think hopefully fans will accept that that's what college athletics has turned into. And the more you support it, the better off things are going to be.
It's another resource we need to give our coaches to give them the opportunity to be successful. You're 100% right. We're not going to win the day with an NIL budget, right? But we certainly need to be competitive within who we're competing against from our peer institutions, and then look aspirationally, right? I mean, look what New Mexico and some of the others in the Mountain West are doing and say, okay, this is where we want to be potentially one day, then we need to show that kind of support. So I think it's an opportunity, especially the retention piece is really the key for where we're at, because no doubt, right, when the Sun Bowl's rocking this fall and we're winning games, we are putting these student athletes on a stage not only for the community to embrace, but unfortunately for larger schools with larger NIL budgets and larger XYZ to say, am I going to recruit the high school kid, or am I going to go look at UTEP and the guy that's put up 1,200 yards this year? That's what we need to be able to say, hey, we'd love to keep you here as long as you want to be here. And so luckily all of our coaches, none of us are leading the recruiting process with NIL, but it's nice at the end of the visit to sit down, and money will come up at some point. That's just where we're at. And being able to say, hey, we have a community here that wants to partner with you and that wants to be supportive, and here are examples of what that's looked like in the past. And that's completely within the rules.
All right, we're going to come back more with Michael Levy. Aaron Price will get in on this discussion as well. Questions, comments, thoughts, 505-6009 on the phones, 505-6009, 600 ESPN El Paso on Twitter and X, as well as our free app where you can listen in and chat with us in real time. We'll keep things moving with our NIL discussion here today, but first, Charlie 1 with traffic. 22 past the hour as we continue here on Sports Talk. Aaron Price is staying at UTEP as the longtime assistant coach is now the assistant athletic director for NIL strategy and sports excellence. I know how much this city means to you. I know how much the university means to you. And having the opportunity to stay on board and shift into really what is the new reality, the new norm of college athletics has got to be a challenge that you're pretty excited about and looking forward to.
Oh, yeah. You hit it on the head with me being able to stay in El Paso with my family and my kids, and they've been born and raised here and still have them in middle school and high school. And so being able to stay here through the tenures and the years that we've been back and forth has been a really blessing for me. My adult life has been pretty much in El Paso, so I kind of feel like I'm in at least a new El Pasoan. So being here, being able to support UTEP was phenomenal. When I got to meet Michael Levy and Coach Center got me and Mike together, and we started talking about the vision that Michael has for the program and for what we have at UTEP and with the things that were going on in the athletic department and all the new energy. It was a great way for me to stay here and help this university. I love UTEP. I love El Paso, and any way I can help to be able to, create success and create, movement and change the landscape of what we're going to be doing here with NIL and our athletic department and the things that we have in store. I think it's going to be really, really exciting, and it's a fun time. So it's great for me to be back, and I'm really, really excited.
Aaron, if you saw somebody at the grocery store and you're catching up and they said, hey, I heard about the NIL thing, but I'm still not sure about it. And I can't believe that student athletes are actually making money off their likeness. Like, this is a new concept to them. How would you approach somebody who's still kind of new to this, as far as maybe not to look at it such a scary thing, but rather embrace it?
Well, I think that you have to look at the first thing that you say is, this landscape is not going to change back. Our NCAA, the things that we're going through. It's always going to be there as an income, or the NIL is not going to go away. So something that we need to embrace if you're going to continue in college athletics, if you're going to continue with your interest in college athletics, is something that you got to embrace and adapt to. And it's going to change every year. But right now, what we are wanting to do is provide an opportunity for kids to be able to stay in El Paso without having to go into the portal, without having to go into a money funding thing where they're looking for advancement monetarily, and be happy here, be able to stay here with and overcome some of the college aspects that they are in need here. So it's going to be it's going to be a struggle, but we're going to get there.
I think also what's important to note is that if you have an athlete, a student athlete that likes it here, is already has a good role on the team that they're on and wants to stay, as long as NIL will offer them something that will keep them happy enough to stick around, they might not look to leave just for more money, because not every athlete is interested in just getting the most money they could possibly get. Some feel that as long as they're getting something and they know they have an opportunity to keep playing, they like the coaching staff, they like the city, you've got a chance to keep them.
Exactly, and that's what our goal is to build that, so we have a foundation and we have a base to what we can do and provide. And the more we can get the Gold Mine Collective, the minor collective out there in people's minds, the better base that we're going to be able to build.
Michael, I'll throw it back to you. I've got a question, just going back to our conversation, involving conference. Maybe others that might be in Conference USA or others at the non-P4 level, Power 4 level. How is UTEP compared to them when it comes to embracing NIL collectives? And is UTEP far away? Are they now more competitive? Like, where are they right now here in 2024?
Yeah, great question. Adrian, as you can imagine, one thing that's difficult is comparing apples to apples, right? And getting true transparency on where collectives have been from a funding standpoint or where student-athlete opportunities are. But generally what I can say is that the minor collective has put UTEP men's basketball in a great position within our conference and a great opportunity within the group of 5 conferences. There's obviously room for more, and we're headed down that direction, but they've done a great job. Our football program and all of our other sports, frankly, are at the bottom, just because we haven't had a really easy way for people to support. There have been opportunities where select individuals, select student athletes have brokered opportunities, and that's great. And we hope more can come of that. But in terms of building a foundation of NIL support generally for those other sports programs, we have a lot of room to go.
Do you feel that the Gold Mine Collective is the first big step to get there? For a lot of reasons. You've made it easy to donate to any sport. You've made it easy to donate one amount of money or a monthly fee, and you've set it up to where as long as people know where to go and what they can do with that, it's just you've almost taken some of the guesswork away as to how people can contribute to these NIL funds for all the different sports.
Yes, exactly. Taking some of the guesswork out of it, eliminate excuses, whatever you want to say. We're trying to make it as easy for people, and the Gold Mine Collective is a huge step. Frankly, you have to have a collective supporting all of your sports with where we are at in FBS athletics. And so they've done a great job of mobilizing within a month. Fundraising is outpacing kind of where we thought we'd be, and we're really excited about getting our sports the NIL budgets, or for lack of a better term, that they truly need,
I got you. We'll come back bottom of the hour as we continue. Let's get a Sports Center update with Michael Plundo, and then right back more of our NIL discussion as we continue. NIL edition of Sports Talk with Michael Levy, Aaron Price. They are joining us here as we get going on the show today. Aaron, I'm curious, now that you've really started to dive into NIL, and you knew all about it as a coach, but now as a associate athletic director, how will you be able to get people that are UTEP fans able to start to contribute to NIL and really help grow the collectives from here on out?
Well, that's the thing that we were trying to do when we first started this, and getting my name and getting our NIL strategy out there to people, the Gold Mine Collective, the Minor Collective. So when a person wants to donate, say, they can get a hold of me, email me, come by the office. We can talk, and I can walk them through that process. And we have a goldminecollective.com website that you get on there. It's very simple, very straightforward website. They can donate through a credit card. They can get on there and donate monthly. They can make a one-time donation. And those are the processes that we've set up with Carrington, with Mike Levy, that made it way easier for somebody to get on there. I've heard multiple times in the last 6 weeks where people have said, well, I want to do something, I just don't know where to go or how to go about it. Now they have somewhere they can go.
They do.
They don't have to pick up the phone and call 1-800-UTEP. They can say, hey, is Mr. Price in? I'd like to talk to him about the NIL strategy.
They've also added it to the website, and that's important because when you go to utepminers.com, there is now in the on the athletics website an NIL tab, and the NIL tab has direct links to both collectives, the Miner Collective as well as the Gold Mine Collective. And just to reiterate, the Miner Collective was the first one established. It's more of a high dollar collective that was devoted for men's basketball, whereas the Gold Mine Collective is pretty much any dollar donation that is all sports. So that way it makes it easier. You could do monthly, you could do a one-time donation, you can actually pick the sport you want to donate to and take all the guesswork out of all this.
Yep, and one key note about the Miner Collective, as you mentioned, it's kind of changed its platform a little bit. Originally, kind of core group, $5,000 was the minimum contribution. Last year, they amended that and opened up their membership to anybody of $1,000 or more. And then Steve Haskins will probably touch on this. So I'm not jumping the gun. I got clarification. I could announce this, but they're going to be introducing a new website here within the week that is actually going to show a gift of any amount is they're going to be able to take a gift of any amount to the men's basketball group as well. But the Gold Mine also supports UTEP men's basketball. I know it's a little confusing, but you could go on and you could meet with Aaron and say, hey, I want to, through one collective, can I support multiple sports? The answer is yes. You could say, I want to give $10 a month to every single sport at UTEP, and that will give the Gold Mine the opportunity to say, hey, Coach Wallace and our volleyball program, we have X amount of money that people have invested in your student athletes. We'd love to get in front of your student athletes, present them opportunities. And so that's where coaches, it's kind of an interesting deal. That's where Aaron's involvement is introductions, student athletes talk to the collectives, they make the deal, we all smile.
There are 12 sports, by the way. So if everybody gave $10 per sport per month, it'd be $120 a month. Just to give people an idea of all the sports that are out there for the Gold Mine and how that could work.
Yeah, exactly. Technically, you have 17 sport programs, but when you do the track and field, indoor, outdoor, 12 is an easier number.
Aaron said something really interesting a little while ago. He said that when he was coming on board, he heard your vision. And it was something that, you sold him. We haven't really talked about that. What is your vision for UTEP athletics and where you see it going forward?
Yeah, well, I didn't pay him to say that. Sorry. I promise no. But really, it's Jim Sinner's vision, right? It's the athletic director's vision. And when I came in, when you go through an interview process, hopefully anybody doing that understands it. What questions, like, where do you see this position going? What's your vision going forward? And it was pretty clear after either talking with the staff and then talking with some key contributors that have been involved in a long time, people want that. They want to say, hey, I know where UTEP is today. I know how we can help today, but how is that going to help us move forward? And I think it really is for us to start thinking about what are our opportunities moving forward, because college athletics is a chaotic arena right now. There's no doubt about it. There are going to be schools that are separated based on all of the changes that are currently being decided in courts for us. But there are going to be institutions that come out of this ahead, and they need to be forward-thinking. And so really my vision and our thought process as a staff is to start making people think a little differently. Yeah. And that's maybe going to be asking people to give in ways they haven't given before, things that you can kind of expect to see, you meaning the donor community here at UTEP, is kind of a rebranded approach of the Minor Athletic Club that will hopefully be rolling out by the start of football season. that really just kind of changed the messages because, frankly, what we were raising money for 5 years ago, while some of our needs exist, we have a lot of different needs today. So we need to modernize a little bit as an organization and as an offering. And really, I think the more we can make giving and being a part of UTEP athletics a fun social experiment as well, right? We are in the entertainment business. We got to remember that at some point. And so getting people together in settings that they want to spend their free time in, and at the end of the day, give their resources to.
Michael, going back to the vision, do you feel like winning and having success in these different sports, whatever sport we're talking about, and NIL go hand in hand if you're kind of talking about this vision that you all have?
Yep, absolutely, Adrian. I mean, there's two ways to look at it, right? I've heard plenty of schools say, well, once we win, then I'll support. Well, I think we're looking at this taking more of the field of dreams model, right? Let's support because that support is needed to be successful. And we know we want to be set up for that success. And so everything that we're doing is when we go to a bowl game, when we go to the NCAA tournament in men's, women's basketball, when we win a conference championship, we're not saying, oh, man, that was fun. I really wish we would have taken advantage of that. Now we're back spinning our wheels, right? So it's getting everyone prepped and primed for that success. And I really think we have a collection of coaches. We just had a retreat for the first time. We spent a day and a half of talking strategy and how we can better support our coaches. I really feel like we have a really center group that is supporting each other, and we have a lot of room for success. And so looking forward to that playing out starting this fall.
Okay. 20 in front of 5 o'clock as we continue here on Sports Talk. We'll take a timeout. We'll come back. We'll wrap up hour number 1 with you till 7 o'clock. Talking NIL today, right here, 600 ESPN El Paso. Steve Haskins and Cliff Eisenberg will be here representing the Miner Collective and the Gold Mine Collective. And again, if you would like to learn more on the NIL, you can just go to utepminers.com, click the NIL tab, or just contact Aaron directly because he said that he'd be more than happy to help take you through the process. Which brings me to my next question. Say there's somebody listening and wants to do an NIL deal with a particular student-athlete themselves. They want to do something independent of the Miner Collective and independent of the Gold Mine, and they just want to work with a student-athlete or athletes for that matter. How would they go about doing something like that?
Well, we're going to have a couple things in place for people that and they're more than welcome to do. Anybody that wants to has a specific need for an athlete for a commercial or an event that they're going to do at their business, they can get in contact with us, and then we can make that happen through certain follow up with the players and the coaches and things. But what we can do is we're going to have a setup where they're going to be able to email their wishes, and then we can get them in contact with the appropriate people through the collectives. And
I think that's where it's changed, guys, because I know when this thing first started, the university couldn't have anything really to do with the collective. It was weird. Like, they could tap into the resources, but they weren't really supposed to be doing anything specifically with necessarily the dollar figures going to the collective. It's kind of a tricky and sticky slope. But now, Aaron, as you're saying, you can kind of help that process out, where if somebody is interested in working with student athletes and kind of sends you an email or calls you and gives you more of an idea of what they want, you can help kind of put those two together.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And through the people that work with our collective, they're pretty willing to help out and get the right hands onto the businesses.
Michael, I'll jump in. I'll ask a question, another one to you. Priority list. When you're asking the UTEP priority list, and we're comparing NIL with things like the MAC and things like other facilities that might just need improvement at UTEP, when you all strategize, where do you begin to start as far as the top priority list for your donation or your donor base?
Yep. Great question, Adrian. I'll start off. I have different approaches, as you can imagine. But if you're local, first, if you're able and willing, come to our games, right? Come to the Sun Bowl, come to the Haskins Center, come to Memorial Gymnasium, because that energy is so important to the future growth of all of our programs. So be a season ticket holder, and if you want better seats in our venues, usually those better seats come with a gift to the minor athletic club, and so you're going to become a member that way. And then really have a role with supporting our sports directly. And through that, NIL is a new opportunity to do that, as well as our sport-specific giving clubs, like for football, the Gridiron Club, women's basketball, the Fast Break Club, the Round Ball Club, men's basketball, for example. So we would love for people to say, the perfect donor, right? Adrian says, hey, Michael, I would love to talk to you about me supporting multiple different priorities and maybe taking that gift that they have in mind that they budgeted and supporting that across multiple different channels. But it's really a approach that we love talking to people about when we sit down with them.
Let's go to some messages we're getting on Twitter and X for you guys. All right, this is from Clearwater, at Clearwater Win, for the Minor Collective. I want to help men's basketball, but donations starting at $1,000 price me and many other minor fans out. Why can't it allow folks to donate less? Now, it's a good question, because prior to a last segment when we talked about how the minor collective has started now to loosen the minimum donations, plus the gold mine, which allows, for the most part, any amount of money being donated, whether it's monthly or a one-time fee. It's now you've given many more options and flexibility for men's basketball as well as other sports too.
Yeah, exactly. That's an easy question. We can answer that one. First of all, the minor collective here within the week will have the opportunity to actually go online and do that. But they can go right now to thegoldminecollective.com or go to our utepminers.com page and set up a one-time donation or a monthly donation of any amount.
Okay. This comes from UTEP fan, at UTEP fan, the number 1. I know the goals of the collectives are to help all student athletes across all sports at UTEP, but is there more that is being done to help the UTEP track and field team stay competitive and keep attracting elite talent from the NIL perspective?
Yes, is the short answer. I'll let Aaron touch on this as well if he wants to, but one thing that we are doing are having individual meetings with all of our sport programs to figure out what is their top priority, because let's face it, NIL is a need, but it's not the only need of our sports. And so each sport is going to have a different approach to NIL, right? Football, we know that's just the game that we're playing in. Sports like track and field, I'm not saying that NIL won't help us get closer to our goals, but they're probably not facing that in recruiting quite as much as others. So that's going to be something that really, hopefully, we can graduate into.
Now, track and field is tricky, and I'm going to tell you why. You're not allowed, a foreign athlete is not allowed to receive NIL compensation here in the States. This is where it gets even crazier.
Oh, yeah.
If you want to work an NIL deal with a foreign student athlete and compensate them in Mexico, is completely legal because it is outside of the United States. So, as crazy as it sounds, let's say you want to support track and field and you see a couple of student athletes that are foreign athletes and you want to have them do something for your business, and you happen to have a business in Mexico, they could go across the bridge, make an appearance, be compensated and paid as long as that goes in foreign soil versus here in El Paso or in the U.S. It's almost like there are certain rules that most people wouldn't even understand unless they start to explore.
Yeah, that should make us an even more attractive destination, right?
It should be. That's right. That's exactly right.
I'm not sure it's as easy as just walking across El Paso Street and handing somebody a check, but there are some rules we're playing by that frankly don't make sense. But guess what? They are the rules. So how do we work around those?
the strategies that we have for each coach is going to be different. And like with track and field, we've already talked with Coach about how he envisions NIL to help benefit his team. But he can be able to attract in-state talent instead of just having them walk on or get a small scholarship. We can also find ways to get money into those partial scholarship kids from in town or in state for us to supplement that outside of the international rules.
Yeah, let me touch on that. Aaron brings up a really good point because NIL, I think, is looked upon as really this pay-for-play type mentality, right? So that's what dominates the headlines. But where NIL can make a tremendous difference in the lives of student athletes is through that, because not every sport offers full scholarships. They're like equivalency scholarships. And so if you're able to supplement your basically, let's just call it your compensation package, right? It's like, I'm going to give you 50% scholarship. You're going to get a check for XYZ. It'll pay to your dorms. Well, if you add all that up, you're still in the hole a couple $1,000s, right? If you had NIL, that makes a much more compelling opportunity for a student athlete to come here as opposed to Texas Tech, frankly. Yeah.
All I know is this, guys. There's a lot to understand. There's a lot to really digest with all this. And we're still learning on the fly, because what is part of NIL in May of 2024 could be completely different than what we see in September or January of 2025.
Absolutely. I would not be shocked. There's obviously a lot of things that happen, but for all those people that love following the media, pay close attention to the House versus NCAA lawsuit that's currently in settlement negotiations. It's pretty likely that that's going to have kind of sweeping changes across our industry. One outcome that potentially could happen in the future, we don't know this, is that these NIL opportunities, the university can really facilitate directly. I'm not sure what that's going to look like, but we'll be prepared for whatever that comes. That's our mentality.
All
There's
right.
4 different outcomes they're projecting, and so we'll see.
Sounds interesting.
We'll be told the rules, I'm sure.
It sounds like it. Guys, thanks for starting us off this hour. We appreciate it. Have you back. We'll talk more about this. But, again, good discussion, and appreciate you all both being here.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Great. Yep. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
From Michael Levy and Aaron Price to Cliff Eisenberg and Steve Haskins. They both represent the 2 collectives for UTEP. We'll do that next. Stay with us. Sports Talk continues. 600 ESPN El Paso.
And Adrian Broadus.
All right, start of hour number 2 here on Sports Talk. Welcome back, everybody. And we are focusing on NIL today. In fact, there was some great national sports stories. Xander Schauffele winning the PGA Championship, about as exciting as it gets. Adrian, if you watched yesterday's final round, especially when Bryson DeChambeau birdies 18 to go to 20 under, and it looks like we could have a possible playoff, that's when Xander Schauffele was able to birdie 18 on his own and win his first ever major. What a great experience for golf fans watching the PGA.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it. If you would have told me I'd be rooting for Bryson DeChambeau in a major, I would say no way, Steve. There was no chance at all. But that's what was happening yesterday. I was rooting for Bryson. He was high-fiving fans. He was out there celebrating with people, fist bumps left and right. He really rose up the ranks, but could not seal the deal when it was all said and done. Give Schauffele a lot of credit for winning.
Oh, man, but it was great golf. It was exactly what you wanted this weekend at a major like that. Great golf. And I still stay Scotty Scheffler coming back from getting arrested to shooting a 5-under on Friday could be one of the greatest sports feats of all time. Because how many times does a superstar have to spend the morning in jail, get out, and still find a way to have a great performance with all of that adversity?
Yeah, really. If you take away Saturday, you're talking about a historic weekend for Scotty Scheffler.
That's right.
He also played great yesterday. He just had a terrible Saturday.
He sure did. As far as basketball goes in the NBA, we now know our Western and Eastern Conference Finals are set. I'm looking forward to Boston and Indiana Indiana. I'm looking forward to Dallas and Minnesota. We'll have plenty of time this week to be previewing both NBA, Eastern and Western Conference finals, but they were fun to watch heading into the weekend.
Yeah, I mean, the story was the fact that the Timberwolves have taken the torch away from the Denver Nuggets, and Denver goes back into the list of teams like the Milwaukee Bucks, the Toronto Raptors, winning one NBA championship and not able to defend that championship.
You're right, but I feel like Minnesota and Indiana have arrived, and it's fun because they're two teams that nobody expected to be playing for a chance to go to the NBA Finals, and they're here. And if it's not Minnesota, it's Dallas, another Cinderella story. If it's not Indiana, it's Boston, probably the one team we thought would be here when the playoffs started.
With Minnesota, they're a team right there that will be back. They'll be back next year. They'll be back the year after. And I'm just talking back in contention. The Pacers, I mean, this is a magical run. I don't think anybody saw this. I don't know what their future is going to look like, but the fact that they beat out the Knicks was more of a reason because the Knicks had no one playing, man. Everybody got hurt in that game.
I know. Makes you wonder as a Knicks fan what could happen if the team actually stayed healthy in a playoff run with that group what they have.
Yeah, and the whole Eastern Conference, really.
It's a great point. All right, we're going to continue our NIL focus on this show right now because joining us from both collectives, the Miner Collective and the brand new Gold Mine Collective, we have Steve Haskins and Cliff Eisenberg here. Gentlemen, please, if you can, just you can move up to the microphones a little bit. It's great to see you both. Thanks for being here. Steve, you've been here plenty of times before. Cliff, you are making your first appearance on Sports Talk. It has taken us years and years to get you here, but it's about time. Thanks for stopping by.
Thanks, Steve.
You got it. And Steve, always great to see you. Last time I saw you face-to-face was when your dad's statue was being unveiled a few months back, and love the fact that we get to see that every time we drive by the university. But now we get to talk to you about something you're very passionate about as well, and that's the Miner Collective.
That's right. And Steve, I just want to tell everybody out there, the statue wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for Steve Kapowitz. He was there you were there from the beginning to the end and made it happen. And I've always said I can never thank you enough.
No, I appreciate that. You're welcome.
But the Miner Collective, we've been working on it, and I think one of the things, talking to the guys, some of the guys around the country that are doing well with it, it's really thinking out of the box and doing different things. Just trying to get folks in the community to give money, isn't an easy deal, and we've come up with a couple of ideas that have been working around the country, like our being a broker for a trucking company. Never thought that would happen, but it's already we've seen some success with that, and schools like Georgia, I think they collected $8.3 million last year. Little schools like McNeese State, $3.3 million. That changes the game, and this is one way that I think that we can really get over a lot of the schools that we compete against, and I'm excited about that. And we're moving forward. We've even got something else that we're trying to see if we can get through, and I'll let you know about that. But it's I think the main thing now is, like Cliff would tell you, is just getting the word out and trying to get folks interested and realizing that the community can really make a difference.
It can. In fact, that's where college sports is, gentlemen. It really is. It's a point now where if you don't contribute to NIL, the program competing with you in your conference will. And this is the new reality of college athletics. And coaches are having to adjust to everything that they've ever believed in to the new norm, which is just collectives being able to help support athletic programs. And that's kind of where we're at right now, isn't it?
The only way to stay competitive now with teams in your conference and other teams is to raise enough money to pay the players for their NIL.
It's true. And Cliff, you've grown up in El Paso. You've been a UTEP fan your whole life. Steve, ever since you first moved here, it's always been UTEP. But here we are. The two of you are both working together on collectives, different collectives, but it's the same goal. The goal is to try to put enough money into these collectives to help each sport out so they can compete a little bit better in their league and against other schools that could also be Group of 5 schools around the country.
I think one of the biggest advantage, with basketball. First of all, we have one of the best coaching staffs in the country. We really do. These guys are tremendous. Joe's got an incredible staff, and I've noticed that he doesn't get a lot of guys going in the portal. You're going to have one here and there but these guys seem to really like the program. They like the city. And they've done a heck of a job of maintaining that, and we just got a 4-star recruit, as you well know, and really excited about seeing Ahmad Bynum play. And Marlon Maxey, in fact, called me. His nephew was on that team, and he said this guy's a real deal. And so I know the coaching staff's excited, and that's this part of it. And I'm looking forward to minor basketball this coming year because, like I said, first of all, we have such a tremendous staff that whatever the players these guys get are, it's going to be a big advantage once we really get this thing going, and then they can get what they need.
Steve, you said something really interesting earlier, and that is that you got to think out of the box when it comes to NIL collectives. When you were first approached by the organizers of the minor collective to kind of head this and really help steer it for the future, how long did it take for you to really start to educate yourself and understand what these NILs are about and kind of where UTEP needs to go in order to stay competitive with all of its peers?
It didn't take long to realize that it was going to be that it's not an easy thing to go out and try to get folks to that. You got a lot of people you talk to that give money to the athletic department and so they feel like they're getting hit twice, and so you try to have to find different areas. And 3 or 4 months ago, Tim Floyd called me about a trucking company that was brokering would allow collectives to become the broker, and so we've got that going, and that's been Pat Burns at Sarah Farms is all in, and we projected that to be about $40,000 a year that we'll bring in, and by the way, Pat's saving $10,000 on his trucking, so it's a good deal, and I think things anything you can to cobble things together to try to. My goal is if we can get to $1 million and then go from there.
Well, let's explain the trucking aspect a little bit more detail, because people are probably hearing Tim Floyd, trucking, Pat Burns, Sarah Farms, what are we talking about? So a few months ago, Tim Floyd approached you with an idea that's worked with other universities. And as you said, it's a trucking company that allows collectives to be the broker, whereas a portion of the money that the trucking companies will receive for the rides and the transportation will go directly to these collectives.
Right, and really it's a pass-through cost for companies that they can use either these guys have their own trucks, but it's really the broker side of it, and when we've looked at it, its bottom line is that if we become the broker, we get a fourth of the broker fee, and it can be fairly significant. And it, like I said, when they come in there and look at it, they try to save the money or worst case scenario to break even. Mm-hmm. So it's a way for, like I said, Sarah Farms is going to be given $40,000 this year, and they saved $10,000 on their trucking. So that's the idea, that we're going to be able to use a service that companies use that's a cost to them, that if we become the broker, we get a fourth of that, and it's like I said, Georgia's, I think they did about $8 million last year. Little McNeese State, about $3.3 million. They're fortunate. They got a steel manufacturer there that's an alumni. And so McNeese State, people look and say, wow, they went 30-3, and they had 5 or 6 guys from the Big 5 conferences. Well, they had the money to do it.
And they did. Now, if there are businesses listening, might as well throw it out there right now, that use 18-wheelers for transport into El Paso and outside of the city, but utilize that, and they wanted to actually do something like this where a portion of it would go to the university, they would be able to do just that in terms of working with this company, which would try to either save them some money or worse, break even, but you would know that a portion of that brokerage fee for those transports would then go to the UTEP, the minor collective.
That's right, and the one thing we haven't done yet is send something out to the Alumni Association, and out of 500,000 alumni, if there's just a small percentage of them that can that do it, that could be huge. And it's just, I think it's a matter of getting the word out on that, and continue to have people, that we've got our base of guys that have give a decent amount of money. Yeah. We want to bring in everybody else, and even we're starting a new deal where it's down to $20, and on our other one I think is $1,000 is the minimum, but we have another. That's only going to be about down to $20. We haven't finalized everything yet on that.
Just trying to make things more affordable is what it's
absolutely.
All about.
More fans going, or if we just get people to buy season tickets, that's a huge deal right there. But for where we're at, I think we're okay. We want to get up there to where we can really compete. And like I said, the easiest thing is that we've got such a great coaching staff. These guys can really have done a great job of keeping these kids here. They like it. They love you can tell the kids really love it. And that makes it a lot easier that we're not having guys moving in and out of the porthole.
Yeah. When we come back, we'll find out from Cliff why the Goldmine Collective was started and what led to that creation when we come back. Plus more with Steve Haskins as well. Your phone calls, 505-6009. As we go to Charlie 1, let's get our first traffic update of the hour. We have an NIL edition of the program today. We started with Michael Levy and Aaron Price. Now we have Cliff Eisenberg, Steve Haskins. Coming up on our 6 o'clock hour, we'll do some NMSU coverage as well. Paul Grindstaff is going to join us, along with Jim Willis, who's carrying it's an incredible story, really, because he began something that has now led to about 16 schools in college sports using this. So impressive stuff. And I'll tell you this much, I feel like, we're at the end of this show, you're going to get a really, really good background of how this thing works and what you can do to help. Caring Scent, by the way, is the Goldmine Collective, and that is where we start this conversation with Cliff Eisenberg, who has been a lifelong UTEP fan. I'm curious. I mean, Steve has talked about the Minor Collective, which was the first NIL collective, but for you wanting to get involved and helping out now with the Goldmine Collective that has been launched, give me a little bit of an idea about how this project started.
So, taking off from what the Minor Collective started, a group of 3 or 4 of us, Tyler Lyon, Mike Luciano, Josh Rhodes, we're talking about how we could do the same thing for football. So we got together and we talked to Jim Wills at Caring Scent. None of us want a job. We want to raise money for UTEP football, and under our collective, you can contribute money to any sport in any amount you pick on the website. So using Jim's platform, we were able to negotiate a deal where he does the most of the admin, and our job is organize and try to help raise money, and that's what we're trying to do right now.
So it started with football, but quickly when it was getting launched, realized, you know what, we shouldn't just have men's basketball and football. Let's give every program at UTEP an opportunity for fans to give or donate so that they could contribute to the NIL of any sport that you have.
Right. It's a much more efficient way to do it than to have different fundraising arms for each sport trying to raise money for the athletes in those sports. So it's a much more efficient way to do this.
And knowing now that you've kind of simplified the process, meaning the website gives people a chance to make a one-time donation, a monthly donation, pick their sport. I mean, the gold mine has pretty much made it about as simple as it can get for fans to really contribute.
Correct. Yeah. Everything that you said, that's the way it works. And that was the goal, to make it easy to contribute and to allow smaller contributors to participate in NIL too. It's not just for guys that give big money, so everybody can contribute at whatever level and help UTEP sports.
This is almost, and it's not just that they can. As crazy as it sounds, guys, it has to happen, because if it doesn't, then the next school is going to get a chance to benefit off of that. And we've talked about how some fans will say, well, we want to win first. Well, they kind of go together hand in hand. When you have a good, strong NIL, it's going to allow you to get not only the best athletes in the portal, but retain the best athletes from trying to leave your program, which is what each school is going to need to not just try to survive, but to try to win championships, draw fans, and ultimately increase their revenue when it comes to athletics.
Yeah. I think that the four of us that started talking about this, thought it was good timing because we have a new coaching staff coming in. So a lot of excitement. More than the obvious reason that you want UTEP to have a successful and winning football program, because like I said, we started with football, is that as conferences realign more and more, in order to have an opportunity to align ourselves with more traditional rivalries like Colorado State and Wyoming and New Mexico, San Diego State, we have to have a successful football program. We have to have facilities and we have to have a winning football program. And if we have that, when the time comes, when we have the opportunity to move on to a conference with the teams that most El Pasoans identify with, the old WAC conference type teams, then we need to be able to be there at that time to take advantage of it. And that, to me, that's a big motivation.
I like the fact that for you, the end game is eventually go to another conference like the Mountain West, because you realize that in order for that to happen, you have to win. And if in order to win, you need NIL, it all works hand in hand. And it's so difficult for a team that's mediocre to try to force themselves out of one league and into another. It's a lot easier when you're winning titles, drawing 40,000 plus, and suddenly realizing that you're the big fish in this one league.
Right. And like I was telling somebody the other day, you have a successful basketball program. We're a basketball school for the most part. You get 10,000, 12,000 people. You have a successful football team, you have 40,000 people in the stands. So it's good for the city. It's good for the university. And like I said, the end game is to get to a conference where we have more identification with the other teams in the conference. Not to knock our conference, but we don't have a lot in common with Kennesaw State and the other teams that
Missouri, that's about to be coming in another year or so. So and Delaware.
Yeah, I mean, what does UTEP have in common with Delaware?
Zero.
Yeah, we need to be aligned with the teams that we grew up with, and that are traditional rivals of UTEP.
Generally speaking, you both, and again, speaking from your perspective right here, if someone argues to you, and I think you guys would be great to answer this because you guys speak so matter-of-fact and almost as a liaison, not directly affiliated with the university, but somebody who's trying to help and genuinely trying to work with these student athletes. But again, if somebody argued to you, well, I'm not for paying student athletes. I'm not really behind this right here. How would you try to just combat this and educate them that, hey, NIL nowadays isn't necessarily a luxury for student athletes. It's a necessity.
Well, you said it. I mean, it's the only way we can compete now. Everybody's doing it, whether you like it or not. There's lots about college athletics maybe you don't like. Maybe you don't like the freedom of the transfer portal. But that's a reality of the situation. The same thing with NIL. You might not like paying players, but if you want to win and you want to have a competitive program, you're going to have NIL money.
I think that's fair.
And you said about the portal. Boy, the NCAA could really help out a lot of school. I think every school, even the big schools. From you listen to the Alabama coach when you or Bill Self at Kansas talk. It's like they don't worry about the NIL money. They've got that, but they worry about the portal creates a lot of this. And until the NCAA could really help out, but in the meantime, the conference we're in, we need to dominate it, and we need to dominate it big time. And then been with Cliff on this for a long time. We getting to play the Lobos and Colorado State and those schools. But in the meantime, we're in the conference we're in, and I'll tell you what, it's very competitive. It might not have the same name recognition, but having the Aggies as a conference game, that's a tough deal. But if we can move this forward and really make a difference where these coaches are getting the athletes they can really make a move with that, and it's just we can't waste time either. It's got to be now, and then hopefully, we have this success and we can make our way over there to the conference that we'd really like to be in and should be in.
We'll come back less than 2 minutes. More with Cliff, more with Steve, more of your questions as well. But first, let's go right now to we've got Michael back and Michael Plundo with this Sports Center update. As we continue here on Sports Talk. So I see this question from Esteban. I want to read it because I think others would probably echo the same feelings. And Esteban says, I don't know about other fans, but I don't want $1 of my money going to a player that subsequently goes into the portal. That's the issue that needs to be addressed. Now, I can understand that if you pay somebody for an appearance and they collect and then go into the portal after that season, you might feel that way. But the beauty of the Gold Mine Collective and really the Minor Collective is that you're contributing to a sports general NIL pool. And from that amount of money that builds up, you can allow that to retain players or go after players. I mean, to me, the only way you'll feel like the money you're giving an individual or an athlete would bother you if they leave would be if you pay them directly for some kind of an appearance or something that they're doing representing you and your business. So guys, I don't know your thoughts on that, but the reality is players leave. Players leave in every university. And if you use that same motto, then nobody's going to give to any of these NILs. And you just have to realize that that's just part of the process right now, is that some athletes will stay, others will go, and if they leave, you're going to try to find somebody that's just as good or better than the previous athlete.
My understanding is from the administration of the NIL funds is that some of the money's deferred till after the transfer portal closes, so that it's not all paid up front. If it was up to me and I could control it, I wouldn't pay the money until after the transfer portal closes. And if we make a bowl game, you have to play in the bowl game. You know how all these college football, none of them want to play in the bowl games afterwards? Yeah. I wouldn't pay them the money till after they play in the bowl game and the transfer portal closes. But you could pay them some because they need the money. But I would defer part of it to the end.
Well, and the truth is, guys, your NIL funds are not directly connected with the university. They're independent. So when it comes to student athletes, and how they get compensated, there's ways you can do it. And if that's the way it is, then that's the way it is. You tell somebody, hey, we'll make sure you get compensated, but not till after a bowl game for football or after a tournament for other sports, then that could all be part of the process. It really could.
To his point, Esteban's point, Joe Golding's staff, they've done an unbelievable job. They've only lost, I think, a couple. One was Sully Boom, and when Joe got here, Sully Boom was somebody. If he transferred, I wouldn't have bothered me that much. And when Joe Golding got finished with him, he had an incredible year. and it cost a couple $100,000 we didn't have, and he went to Xavier, and Sean Miller told Joe, he says he won about 8 or 9 games for us, and that year we were about 14 and 18, and that's what we were missing. So bottom line though is he's done a tremendous job of maintaining, has a culture that these guys want to stay here, and we haven't that hadn't been too bad. We lost the big guy to Texas, which, you know, when big schools start throwing around, you know, $250,000 for a guy they don't even use, you know, that's what you're up against. But I understand where he's coming from. But I'll tell you what, the UTEP basketball program has dealt with this situation, I think, in the best way. They've created a culture and an atmosphere. These guys want to stay. They want to, they love the school. They love the city. They love the coaching staff. They love the facilities. And you know, but the bottom line is to really advance ourselves, we got to keep climbing up. And there's, like Cliff said, there's no other way around it. There are no other choices. Yeah. And that's why we're fighting hard to try to try to get this, not to just maintain it, but we got to build above that and get to a place we haven't been yet.
You know, I just wanted to say that for those people who doubt that we can make El Paso UTEP a winning football team, I love Coach Walden's comparison to Boise State and UTSA. Who heard of Boise State 20 years ago? And now look at their football program. Look at UTSA. They weren't even a Division I team. I don't know how many years back, but not too far in the past, they weren't even a Division I team. And now look how good they are. So it can be done. It can be done. But it takes money to do it.
Both of them have brought in a bunch of money. And UT San Antonio, I remember when they had a contract for their coach for 10 years for $25 million. I said, wow, that's a little out of our league. And they bumped it up in a short period of time, but they did it in a short period of time because money talks, and that's the bottom line.
True. I want to mention something else before we go to break, and that is this. Football drives everything. We know that. Football does. You win in football, it can help fund an entire athletic department and then some. And after that is men's basketball. And I think that is there's no doubt about that. But we've seen successful volleyball programs here. And right now, Ben Wallace has a very successful volleyball program. We saw a UTEP women's basketball program that at one time was selling out the Don Haskins Center, went to the NIT finals, and the entire city was captivated by that team. And NIL money will not go, will not have to be as much to make a difference in some of the Olympic sports and the smaller sports like it would in football and men's basketball. So if there are UTEP supporters and they want to get behind volleyball, or they want to get behind softball, or track, or women's basketball, or soccer, and contribute to those NIL funds, those could have a huge impact on the competitiveness of those teams that are fielded.
I think women's basketball will probably be the next. That's where I'm kind of focused on. If we can get the men's basketball, the minor collective going, really love to help the women's basketball. I know that they might have just missed out on a really good player recently, and if the funding was there, we could have really helped out Keitha. And I know one thing, my dad would be all about that, about trying to help get the women's program going. And if it doesn't, and maybe it doesn't take as much, Keith Adams is another one. She can coach as well as anybody in the country, and you give her a little bit of help, she can make it go a long ways.
I'm with you. All right, 19 in front of 6. We'll come back. We'll wrap things up here with Cliff and Steve. And if you've got questions, 505-6009, our telephone number. Stay with us. Sports Talk continues, 600 ESPN El Paso.
I don't know how much money that would have made a difference for UTEP if we were 14 and 18 and we were missing a Sully Boom. It was absolutely what we needed. If we'd have gone 20, he would, like I said, Sean Miller at Xavier said he won them 8 or 9, 10 games. He would have done the same for us, and that would have been a tremendous benefit for UTEP. And as far as the question, 4 or 5 star players, well, we've never really gone. When Tim Floyd was in the 80s, I remember we had the lowest budget in the WAC. We had the lowest paid coaches, the lowest budget, But what we did have, recruits came in. It was 12,200, and you could recruit that way.
You could,
but without the NIL money, we're like I said, these guys have done a great job of maintaining. They need to check this new player we just got, Ahmad Bynum. He's a 4-star, so we did get one, and I think that was because of Joe Golding and I think Marlon Maxey had some help. His nephew was on the same junior college team, and I think he pushed him that way. And Marlon's told me this guy's a real deal. Yeah. So, money wise, we can get up there for 4 and 5-star players. Or like I said, we've never really, even in our heyday, we weren't going after the guys at Kentucky or Kansas. Tim Hardaway, we probably could have got for 5,000. But then about a year or two later, it had probably been on about $500,000.
I was going to say, yeah, that's right.
The interesting part is you don't even have to go to the 80s and 90s to look back on players who might have left, if the transfer portal NIL is still around, like Stephon Jackson, just take him.
Right.
Or even guys like Randy Culpepper. If NIL was, around back then, you could lose those guys, but the retention tool part of it has to be overstated with this because it's not about just going out and recruiting some of those guys. It's about keeping the guys here in El Paso or at UTEP.
And that's why Joe Golding has done a tremendous job doing that. Regardless of the fact that maybe we don't have the money that some of these schools got, he's been able to convince these players that they're at the right place and they're making some money. But to go to that next level of paying a guy $500,000 or $1 million. Well, we weren't going after those guys, and when we did get the Stephon Jacksons and those type of players, it would be tough. But I think that has a lot to do with the culture of the team, of where they're at the school is these guys like it and they don't want to leave, and unless somebody comes up with a whole bunch of money, that's just the way it is. I wish the NCAA could really help out and do away with this portal.
Unfortunately, it's not. It's never going to probably happen. This is the new reality. It's the new norm. Let's wrap up the conversation with this, gentlemen. For the first time ever, fans have an opportunity to do something now that can directly impact the future success of each sport in college athletics. They've never had the opportunity to do it before legally. Now they can, and NIL is the way to do it. So if there was ever a time for fans to want to take action, get involved, and try to absolutely make a difference in the future of UTEP athletics, now's the time.
Right, and I think, especially for football, timing is critical right now. We got a new coaching staff, a lot of energy, a lot of enthusiasm in the city. Help out. Contribute to the Gold Mine Collective, and let's give not only the football team but all the UTEP teams a chance to compete against the teams in our league, but especially football. Let's give football a chance to succeed because it carries the water for everything.
All right, great to see you both. Thanks for spending the hour with us. It flew by. And we'll look forward to keeping tabs with both of you on both the Miner Collective, Steve, the Gold Mine Collective, Cliff, and see how things go from here. Appreciate it, guys.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks.
You got it. We'll come back. We'll shift it over, and we'll talk to NMSU next. Stay with us. We'll talk with Jim Wills from Caring Scent and also Paul Grindstaff from the A Mountain Sports Collective as Sports Talk continues, 600 ESPN El Paso.
Kaplowitz and Adrian Broadus.
All right, 2 hours down, 1 to go as we continue here on Sports Talk. Welcome back, everybody. We got a full house today. Alberto's here. Michael Plundo's here. Adrian's here, as always. So you tell me, do you feel better about NIL 2 hours into this show than we did when we started?
Well, I'll say this, Steve. I think fans should feel a lot better about it. I think that first off, you heard the first hour, everything brought up as far as how the university looks at it. And then you heard about it, how the collectives look at it. And I feel like the two visions, they align with each other. Plus the fact that you can kind of relate to people. You don't need to take a big deposit of $5,000 for one of these collectives. No, they start at like $20, and you can go monthly. You can do it one time. The big ask from the UTEP side of things is support. through season tickets and through other ways, like NIL. And the big side from the collective side of things was just embrace it. Get the word out there and embrace the reality that is NIL. That's not going away anytime soon.
Let me say this though, what's really interesting, okay? Because we just listened to Cliff and Steve. Steve obviously was talking a lot about men's basketball, and deservedly so with Joe Golding. And Cliff is talking football with Scotty Walden and how important football and men's basketball is, because those are the two largest revenue generating sports. There's no doubt about that. But as I said earlier, if you get an NIL going for volleyball, for women's basketball, for soccer, for softball, for track, golf, tennis, rifle, most sports in those fields don't necessarily have anything right now. So even if it's not a lot, that can make a huge difference as well. I mean, I know it's football, men's basketball, and after that is women's basketball, but the point is now every sport has an opportunity, and for some sports, it really will not take a huge amount of money to make a massive difference in the success of that program.
Yeah, most of these people want to be here, and that's one of the things. They come to El Paso or they come to this region, they want to be with these respective universities. The one thing that will incentivize them to stay are NIL opportunities. If they have an opportunity to go elsewhere and they're getting paid and it's not that much of a difference from this university or universities in this area to another spot, well, they might choose the other spot because of the NIL opportunities. So, yeah, I love the fact that they outlined the retention side of NIL and how that can also help some of these secondary, or I shouldn't say secondary, just these other programs aside from just men's basketball and football.
You're right. And that takes us to the phones right now, because we have two members of the NIL discussion that are going to join us. First off, I'm excited about from the A Mountain Sports Collective at New Mexico State. None other than Paul Grindstaff is going to join us this hour, and he's also going to be joined by Jim Wills. Now, Jim has started up Caring Scent, which has grown now into a platform that over a dozen Division I schools use. I think I counted about 16 plus right now, and that's taken on a huge life of its own as we continue our NIL focus here on the program. Gentlemen, welcome aboard. Thank you both for being with us this hour, and we appreciate the time.
Afternoon, Steve. Good to be with you all. Thank you, guys. I do have to ask, did Dr. Grindstaff request the REO Speedwagon, or was that just serendipitous?
Adrian, do you want to say was that by request?
Oh, a little Blue Oyster Cult? I like it. Yeah. I mean, maybe it was. Maybe we just had that synergy over the air.
If you guys thought that Blue Oyster Cult is REO Speedwagon, this is going to be a very difficult hour of sports radio.
I mean, to my defense, I heard some riding the storm out.
You did?
Yeah.
I thought we were playing. I thought we were playing.
Maybe that was just for me. So
maybe
I appreciate that.
You know what? I'll tell you what. We will give you, coming out of our next break, we will give you a little REO Speedwagon riding the storm out. I think we've got a live cut of that too, so you will get a special long distance dedication. I love it. All right, gentlemen, we got a lot to cover on the show. Paul, I'm going to get to you in a second because I definitely want to talk about A Mountain Sports and what it's all about. But Jim, let's begin with you in Caring Scent, because this is something that started actually up, I think, even before NILs came around. It was more of a fundraising arm where this began, and now you look at it years later, it's really taken on a life of its own as a platform that not just UTEP and New Mexico State, but many schools have adapted and utilized for their NIL collectives.
Well, Steve, you're hired. You did a very good job of recapping who we are, and we really appreciate the chance to join you both today. You've done an incredible job the first 2 hours, and I think it's really important for the listenership to be able to have an understanding of NIL and then contextualize it with the other ways to support UTEP, New Mexico State athletics. And, we began as a technology company with a unique focus on the athletic support, meaning UTEP fans are most fired up when the guys and the gals are competing and winning. And college athletics was missing a solution that could activate that excitement around big wins and get Miner fans or Aggie fans, not just on I-10, but on I-40, on I-80, or wherever they may live, involved to donate and contribute. And so our focus is really on our Rally Give technology, on helping to activate the timing around real visible moments when teams are having success, and then to provide expertise to help the good folks like Paul and Michael and Cliff and Steve and AP be able to make the most out of those moments. And so we started in college athletics. So we started with UTEP athletics years ago. We started with New Mexico State athletics years ago. And when NIL hit in July of 2021, we sat and watched, because our focus is college athletics. Our focus is on the student athletes, and we wanted to see NIL take shape. And as I mentioned to Adrian before I came on, this is an evolution, and it is taking shape, and we're probably in version 3 of NIL, with version 5 being the endpoint. And what you're seeing, which is so important, and why what you've done today is such a good job, is that, and Adrian, you just used the term align. What we're seeing is further alignment between NIL and college athletics. And eventually they're going to be adjacent or overlap. And so we waited, and then when our partners, such as UTEP and New Mexico State, began to think about NIL, we were there in a way that would allow our partners like UTEP and New Mexico State to harmonize NIL efforts and to make them additive and not at odds or confrontational. And I think that's what we're most proud about as a business and as people who are rooting for a CUSA championship that takes place on I-10, is the fact that we're able to help coordinate and make NIL and athletics fundraising be in sync. So that might have been more than you guys wanted, but that's my stump speech.
I like it, which leads me perfectly into Paul and 8 Mountain Sports, the NIL collective for New Mexico State. Paul, for you, and I'm sure you probably had already known Jim and from his relationship with the university, but when you started to hear about NIL, and then all of a sudden New Mexico State was going to be going into Conference USA and competing in the league and no longer an independent like it had been in previous years in football, where it was affiliated with the WAC and all other sports, was NIL formation imperative for that university's athletic program in order to try and stay at the top of the new league as it was moving into CUSA?
I certainly think it was. And, with NIL, either you're going to be a part of it or you're going to be wishing you were a part of it. And particularly going into a new league with New Mexico State, of course, Mario manning the helm there as the AD, he was instrumental in embracing the positive change that NIL could have. And I think it varies from institution to institution how much the school wants to embrace it. We saw it, we being New Mexico State, as a differentiator, something that could give us a competitive advantage that we might not have otherwise had. So, and right now you're hearing people say, well, the gap's going to be getting bigger. We saw it as a way to level the playing field, both with men's basketball, football in the beginning, to now it's, we've had volleyball player partners, and now of course softball is right in the middle of the season, and the portal just opened up there. And so absolutely, that's something that without it, I don't think New Mexico State would have seen 10 wins last year in football.
I'll say this too, Paul. I watched Mario raise a lot of money during COVID when the university needed it. And Adrian and I would have him on the radio, and we would always say, it's the hardest working guy in college athletics, because I feel like, fundraising is such a huge part of the job, and he's obviously been really good at that. This gives him a chance to let someone else help raise money for his for the NIL collective. And that's important too. In the fact that it doesn't have to be the athletic director who's always trying to raise money left and right from all of his donors. Now this NIL is giving every fan, anybody, an opportunity to try and make a difference.
every fan and business, and in fact, you talked about different levels of contribution. We have different levels of three basic ones: our cornerstone, stakeholder, and benefactor. And that's what everyone is, right? And something that I'm going to go ahead and say, we coined the phrase the three pillars of involvement, which is number one, be a season ticket holder, be a part of your school's athletic club, be it the Aggie Athletic Club or the minor club or what have you. Number two, support your sports booster club, whether it be the six-man club at New Mexico State or the Goal Line Club. And number three, support NIL. Coach Sanchez calls that the holy trinity of college athletics. And, when you get a new coach hired, everyone wants to know, Coach, how can we help? Well, the three things you can do to help: come to games, support the booster club, and support NIL. And with those three things pulling together, there's a real synergy between the department, between us, and, of course, fans in the stands.
Jim, I'll turn it back over to you. On these pillars and on this kind of like holy trinity of things that should happen or good things that could happen around NIL, flipping it on the negative side, what are some of the things that hurt or don't necessarily help in terms of advancing things when it comes to NIL with different universities?
Well, I think the things that we've seen, Adrian, is when there is not alignment between the athletic department and the collective and the fans. And I think what you heard Paul just articulate and what you heard Michael and AP and Cliff and Steve talk about was really kind of, weaving that message of how all these things come together to, again, be additive. So I think first is if you have an institution that is not actively thinking about NIL, but there is NIL activity going on, then you're chasing the same dollar. And what you've seen with certainly in 2022 and to a lesser extent last year was, I'm a physician, and in healthcare and medicine, when you see new regulations, you see a lot of cottage industries pop up that try to make money off the unknown and uncertainty of how those regulations will fall out. And you've seen that in college athletics with NIL. And certain institutions have brought on outside firms that are really staffing agencies to go ahead and chase dollars. Now, if they're chasing 100K and the athletic department is chasing 100K, they're at odds. But if they're aligned in the way that UTEP and New Mexico State are, then they can both get to that endpoint together. And so I really think coordination and having leadership, the fact that New Mexico State has Paul and his team and they're tightly aligned, the fact that UTEP, has AP on board now, Michael is here, Mark, and the rest of the team, I think, those are the right ingredients for sustained success. I think folks who went down that path earlier on may have had that early adopter advantage, but in the way NIL is taking shape and potentially its final shape, those folks will be at a disadvantage while UTEP and New Mexico State will be poised for sustainable success in this world.
Just getting started this hour with Jim and Paul. We're talking about our NIL discussion as it pertains to New Mexico State this hour, just like we spent the first couple of hours talking UTEP. We'll keep that moving right after Charlie 1 and this time out. Listening to 600 CSPN El Paso. Don't you love the live version of this song from Mario Speedwagon when he says, "Last song, people"? That's it. This is the end. This is the end of the concert with Riding the Storm Out. There you go, Adrian. Now you're giving him a little taste of some Mario Speedwagon as we continue here on the show.
I like it. And it does kind of sound like Burning for You.
Yeah, a little bit. You're very generous today. After 2 hours and 22 minutes of the show, I could see how you softened up a little bit. I really can.
We're getting good knowledge over here.
We are. All right, we are back right now. We've got Paul Grindstaff with us from A Mountain Sports. We've got Jim Wills with us as well from Caring Scent, talking a little NIL from the NMSU standpoint. But as Jim pointed out, he also works with UTEP and the Gold Mine Collective that was launched about 6 weeks ago. And we joined UTEP in our first couple of hours to talk about that. Gentlemen, welcome back to the show. We appreciate the time. And, Paul, we'll continue with you for a second on the A Mountain Sports NIL Collective that has been established through New Mexico State. And I understand the importance, again, of what football, men's basketball will do for an athletic department, driving the dollars and really helping to support all of athletics. But I also understand from a standpoint of some of the Olympic sports, like softball, for example, that if fans do support and contribute to those NILs, those dollars could have a huge impact on the success of those respective athletic programs.
There certainly is an exchange rate, I guess you could call it, with the Olympic sports. And in fact, when you think about the star power that exists, a lot of that exists on the female student athlete side. And I'll add that it sure helps if you could take, let's say we had a female student athlete who's a true freshman, who's a conference player of the year, who's the all conference as a pitcher, who's all conference as a left fielder, and who's the freshman of the year. And if you took an individual like that, you could sure have a huge impact. And that's exactly what we have at New Mexico State with El Paso Hank's own Desiree Spearman. And so she's been a great catalyst for us with the run that New Mexico State softball had this year. And right now, as we're playing what's called Portal Combat, everyone knows when the basketball and football portals open and closed. Well, looking at the calendar, today's May the 20th. That means the softball portal opened yesterday. And so, it's a lot of fun when you get knee deep in it and get to working on those kinds of things. So to your point, absolutely. Olympic sports on both the male and female side can certainly be impacted.
Now, you mentioned Desiree Spearman. She's going to host a softball camp at Hanks Tuesday, June the 11th. And this is not only going to give her an opportunity to work with some of the younger top softball players in the area that will come out to it, but give her a chance to also be compensated through NIL for her time. And youth camps is a big way that student athletes have utilized NIL in a very positive way.
You're absolutely right. And in the past, a student athlete wouldn't be able to get compensated for those kinds of things or those appearances. And now Desiree, as a player partner, can certainly do that. She could do those kinds of things on her own. And this is a part of kind of a big summer that we have lined up. So she'll have that on June the 11th. And then on August the 8th in Las Cruces, we're going to be presenting an event with our charitable partner Champions for Literacy, featuring Desiree along with Coach Kathy Rodolph, who happens to be a UTEP alum. But that's going to be highlighting Desiree's journey to college athletics, her plan to engage and stimulate literacy in elementary age kids, and talk about her camps that will have already happened this summer and what's going into the season.
But, Paul, this is exactly what we're talking about. And, Jim, I want to give you a chance to comment on this after Paul does. As an NIL collective, you not only work on getting money raised for the collectives, but then you start to think out of the box with these kind of programs for some of your top young athletes in sports that aren't necessarily the top revenue generators, but to still give them a little, and more than anything, keep them where they feel like they're important here, they want to stay here, and they realize that you're creating NIL opportunities for them just like you would if they were a football player or a men's basketball star.
No question, and that applies across the board and also goes into when we talk about the community. You know, we want everyone to come and be Aggies and be great Aggies just like Desiree is, just like our football and basketball players are. We also want them to be active, contributing citizens of the community of Las Cruces. And we feel like we can elevate that platform and really spotlight them and enhance that outward public image.
Jim, I'll go back to you. I want to ask you specifically about possible MTEs, possible in-season invitationals, possible bowl games that could end up having NIL. Are you for this as somebody who works with universities and things like this when it comes to NIL collectives and initiatives? Are you for maybe these tournaments, whether they're in-season or post-season, rewarding players, student athletes with NIL resources like this?
So I think this ties back to, the first 2 hours when the folks ask, what if you meet somebody like you asked Aaron, what if you meet someone at the grocery store who's not for NIL? How do you engage them and bring them along? And, the horse has left the barn on these, right? And so I think it's inevitable. And I think it's about doing it the right way that creates value for the student athlete, but also for the community, as Paul just alluded to. I think that's something that often gets glossed over in NIL, is supporting the student athletes in a way that helps instruct them on how to build his or her brand, such that it's tied to the university, tied to the community, and then, true to the spirit of NIL, they can monetize it. And so, in short, those types of events, the MTEs, are inevitable. We'll be seeing more of those because this is a copycat league, if you will. And, I think with the I-10 corridor tied to I-25, we are in a location, a geography that I think collectively, pardon the pun, could be really successful in this new era of NIL, because we have vibrant communities in Las Cruces and in El Paso. We have incredible coaches, and we have a lot of history, right? And so I think that sets up nicely. I hope that answered your question, Adrian.
It was a good one. It really was. And I don't disagree with that. But I do feel like this is where we're going, guys. There could be MTEs that will try to convince schools to give all the money that they would normally pay them to go play to those NILs versus just give it to the schools. But as we all know, schools need money to keep their athletic departments afloat too. So that's the slippery slope here, guys, is, you don't want to just give everything to NIL because the programs need operational budget as well. And a lot of the times these MTEs or bowl games, it helps give them that.
Well, and I think if I can just highlight one kind of undercurrent here that I think folks would appreciate some insight into is, folks like Jim Center, Mario, Paul, Cliff. There is so much right now at the feet of college administrators that they have to try to unpack and read the tea leaves and act on, in addition to their daily responsibility of keeping student athletes safe and empowered to be the best they can be in the classroom and in competition, managing budgets, managing compliance, managing travel. It's really, we all have our own day jobs. You guys are of course, working an extra hour tonight, hopefully getting paid overtime for that. But really, I think part of the challenge with NIL and these new little innovations that spring from it is there is such an immense amount of information for athletic administrators to unpack, that in addition to everything they need to do on a daily basis. And that's part of what you're seeing take shape right now as well.
So when we talk about these two collectives and other collectives around college athletics, the reason we put this show together, gentlemen, was to educate listeners a little bit more, have them feel more comfortable about collectives and NIL than when we started the show, but also raise awareness. Because you think about it, if everybody was aware of what NILs can do and the difference they can make, you feel like more people would want to become part of this and do everything they could. But at the same time, we're just not there yet, where for most common college athletics fans, they understand it enough to realize that giving monthly the way you would give to a gym membership that could support a particular university's program or sport could make all the difference in the world, especially as those numbers start to add up over time.
Well, and we're in a unique world where folks may call into your show tomorrow when we're gone, and they may complain about one of the two universities that you focused on today. And now the response can be, well, do you have skin in the game? Meaning, are you supporting the enhancement fund or sports-specific fund? Are you supporting the collective in a way that manageable for you. And if you don't, then you really don't have standing. Is that too harsh?
No, it's the reality of the situation. That's where we are right now. That's 2024, guys. That's simply put.
Put your money where your mouth is.
Yeah.
And if NIL turns you off and you're not there yet, I'm sure that TJ Hubbard or Kathy Rudolph would gladly accept your support for their enhancement fund or sports-specific fund, which funds very practical needs for student athletes: travel, training tables, and I think just shed some light on how the sausage is made in supporting student athletes. In the case of these two great universities, the Minor Athletic Club and the Aggie Athletic Club, they generate resources that provide the scholarships for the student athletes. The majority of everything else the programs make use of, they fundraise for themselves. And now beyond that, the third piece is the NIL fundraising. And so, something you'll be seeing more of is the concept of supporter choice that we'll be doing with both UTEP and New Mexico State, and have done some, and that is the ability to run fundraising campaigns that allows Adrian or Steve or whomever to say, I'm going to contribute $100. I'd like it to go entirely to NIL or to the football sports-specific fund, or I want to split it 50-50. And so I think, and again, that ties back to why what you're doing is so good at this time, because folks need to understand, right, who's on first, and then they can make their choice, which is to be a part of it in some way that fits their ethos, or sit it out and not call into your show.
There is a person on Twitter and X, Box Score Boy, who gave us the link to Open Doors. Now, Open Doors is an NIL that was established more specifically for student athletes, for them to sign up with that portal. In fact, I'm on the UTEP Open Doors right now, and I see former members of the football team, former members of the basketball team, current members of each, former members of other sports. It's almost like a UTEP alumni group, which gives them the opportunity to, I guess, contribute to each of these individuals that have all opted into Open Doors. And I'm using this example, guys, because Esteban has been chomping at the bit, who has been on us on Twitter and X to get this in. And he says, is it possible to support a particular player or student athlete as a private donor without a business connection? Is that possible with NIL? And I'm using, I guess, Open Doors as that example because to me, it looks like that kind of fits the bill. But I want to give each of you an opportunity to address it. Jim, Paul, whoever wants to start first, that's fine. But can fans do that and support a player as a private donor through NIL?
The short answer to that is yes, absolutely. And the way it goes, y'all are in Texas, and each state has its own state laws for NIL, and those state laws rule the roost. When the NCAA came out with its interim guidance, they said, well, if there's not a state law, here's what you got to follow. But the state law is such that there needs to be an agreement. In other words, hey, Mr. Player, I'd like to pay you this in exchange for that. And in exchange for that, the quid pro quo has to exist. And as long as there's an agreement with that, so long as it's reported to the school by the student athlete, then that's okay. Now, Open Doors and Influencer are two big, what would you call them, clearinghouses that a lot of schools use, mostly as a platform to report deals to the school for the student athlete. And back in the beginning, there were some schools that set out to do it. Their goal was to make each of their student athletes little entrepreneurs. You go and drum up your own business here and there. And of course, collectives came about to aggregate those funds and make it, if not easier, then some bigger numbers to look at. But the short answer to that question is yes, absolutely.
Jim, I'm going to go back and ask a different one for you. If a player who starts to gain a lot of popularity or has a lot of success on or off the field, on and off the court, and they're starting to become a prospect, and then they start to involve their own agent or maybe a manager or somebody in their life who serves as this kind of role, how does the university or how do collectives try to work with those types of people to ensure that everything works within maybe businesses or anything else involving NIL?
Well, I think you're probably describing an hour in the day of the life of Paul Grindstaff, so he should also opine on this. But it certainly adds an additional layer of complexity, and I think the student athlete and collective, that direct connection allows for very honest conversations. And you always have to follow the economic incentives of any business deal, right? This isn't new knowledge. But when you involve an agent, there becomes new incentives that, can be very good for the student athlete and sometimes may not be. And you've seen that very famously in some instances recently in our geography. And so it's something that, Paul, I'm sure you deal with on a somewhat frequent basis. We deal with it. You want, like anything else, you want to make sure that agent is real, right? Are they licensed? Are they following appropriate rules? Now, if they're a family member, of course, that presents a different dynamic and, somewhat replicates the recruiting dynamic, right, where you have a coach in a room and you're recruiting. And so we'll see more of that, I believe. And it certainly does happen midstream. We've seen that with basketball this past year with a number of players that across different schools that have, like you said, right, gained prominence because of performances and have had agents at their doorstep and have existing agreements in place with collectives, and those evolve. Paul, do you have anything to add to that?
And you know what? We bring up agents into the conversation. That is close to daily, if not multiple times a week conversation. As things have gone along, they've changed guidelines to where third parties, in other words, collectives, can interact with player agents. And I think it's just like anything. As you go through and the more conversations you have, there's agents that you become familiar with and feel more comfortable working with, whereas there might be another agent that you may have had another kind of experience with, and so you might approach that a little bit differently. But those conversations happen, and I think it depends on the school, too. New Mexico State and UTEP, I can't really speak for New Mexico State, but I talk about it being like we're kind of a government job, where we at this level, here's what we have available. At that level, here's what we have available, and we don't really get into horse trading, as it were. But I certainly encourage student athletes, when they have representation, to make sure that to get with them to make sure that they're comfortable with the agreement that they're signing, and make sure that they carry out their end of the quid pro quo, because it would be unfortunate for a student athlete to have a breach of duty or a breach of service, or to not follow the covenants that are in the agreement.
Paul, what's been your biggest obstacle with A Mountain Sports as you've run this now the last few years? What do you find is like the biggest challenge that you face?
The biggest challenge is on the front end is I could use another day in every week and another week in every month. You can't have too many conversations. You can't have enough conversations. And really the crux of it is exactly what you all are doing here, which is educating the masses. Some folks might say, well, you know what? I'm kind of against NIL. Well, that's because we haven't had enough conversations, right? When people ask me what's NIL these days, I'll say name, image, and likeness. That's your team. That's your players. Who's your favorite player? Well, you know what? Look up at the scoreboard at the end of the game. There's going to be one combination of N's, I's, and L's on one side of the scoreboard, and there's going to be NIL on the other side of the scoreboard. You want your NIL to be higher than the other one, right? And that's kind of where we are. So I would say education of the masses would be the biggest thing.
Fair enough. And, Jim, I'll leave you with this. Where are we heading in the future? Where do you think we're going as far as NIL and development and schools like UTEP and New Mexico State here in the future?
Well, I'll share one point that I think is important for folks to be aware of. If you were to buy or sell Google or Tesla today, you know the market price. And with NIL and the value of deals, there is no sunshine, right? Meaning, and there's a lot of lore about what somebody may be offering someone or an NIL deal for a player, and there's no index. And I think what we'll see soon in the next 12 months will be some sort of required reporting of NIL deal and compensation. So we kind of tame the Wild West. I think what we'll see is further alignment between the formal athletics department and NIL efforts. And you're already seeing that. And the important point for that for the fans of UTEP and New Mexico State is that the initial steps they've taken and beyond with NIL have been with that endpoint in mind, meaning they're positioned for success in this world that is coming to kind of a conclusive endpoint. And so I think you're going to have more sunshine and clarity around NIL compensation, and you're also going to have more of a commingling and overlapping, which is appropriate, right? Because fans love UTEP, fans love New Mexico State, and that's what they view. And the collective and fundraising and scholarship clubs will all be viewed under that same umbrella. And then my last point is the next time we do this, we should do this Jerry Lee Lewis style and do a telethon for NIL for the schools.
I'm telling you, that's not far away. That's coming. There will be. I wouldn't be surprised
can get in your
if that's happening. Yeah.
Little black tie.
Sure.
Old school.
Sure. Why not? That would be the way to do it. Just go all day. Go from like 6 till midnight. You have a goal. You try to hit it. And, yes, I wouldn't be surprised.
I'll volunteer to answer phones like Joey Tribbiani.
Fair enough. I think that's perfect. I love it, too. Hey, if you want information on the NMSU NIL, the A Mountain Sports Collective for NIL, just go to AggieNIL.com. That's AggieNIL.com. I mentioned earlier for UTEP, they've got their own NIL tab at UTEPminers.com, and that'll take you directly to either the Miner Collective or the brand new Gold Mine Collective that just started. But AggieNIL.com if you'd like to go to the NMSU A Mountain Sports NIL Collective. Gentlemen, terrific stuff. We appreciate both of you giving us time today, and look forward to doing this again here, probably not before long, so we can kind of update everybody on how we're doing NIL-wise.
Thanks for having us, Steve.
Great. Thank you, guys.
Jim, take care. Adrian, take care.
All right.
You guys, a pleasure. Thank you.
You guys as well. Again, folks, Paul Grindstaff, Jim Wills joining us here on Sports Talk as we continue. 46 past. We'll wrap it up next as we continue.